On the night Oliver believed all the ghosts of his past had vanished, he heard a strange thump on his balcony. When he rushed to check, he found 2 letters lying there, one soaked with rainwater and the other stained with dry blood. Both bore a single name etched in trembling letters: Lillian, the very woman he thought had erased his memory from her life a decade before. His hands shook as he picked up the letters. Recalling in that moment the day he confessed his love to her and then left her to an uncertain fate, he opened the first envelope and discovered a note so soaked that only one unmistakable phrase stood out: "Your false promise." He sat in his dimly lit living room, anxiety gnawing at him, remembering Lillian pleading with him not to leave. At the time, he pretended to have pressing work, when in truth he was fleeing from the burden of commitment to her deepening emotions. He then opened the second envelope and found a razor-edged scrap smeared with dried blood, suggesting that what he had done still lingered in someone's memory. It bore words reminding him that the real wound was not inflicted on the body, but on a heart whose hopes he awakened before letting them collapse. He shuddered with guilt, realizing that if he had foreseen the consequences, he would not have acted so rashly. He sought out his closest friend, Ethan, a journalist fascinated by the mysterious. They met in a nearly deserted cafe as Oliver told him about the eerie letters that had landed on his balcony. Ethan tried to check police records, finding that Lillian's file had never been formally closed with a confirmed cause of death, only labeled missing under unknown circumstances. Oliver was left grappling with the possibility that she might still be alive, or that someone was manipulating them both. The following morning, he found a third letter waiting for him at his door, its words penned in a violet ink that revealed a hidden trembling. It warned him not to fall for the illusion that love could be forgotten, as though the past was still alive and lying in wait for him. His apprehension grew, especially when an unfamiliar man named Daniel knocked on his door. Wearing a dark coat and harboring a gaze that suggested more knowledge than he let on, Daniel handed Oliver a small envelope and left, instructing him to come to an abandoned lecture hall at midnight. Torn between dread and curiosity, Oliver decided to go, hoping for answers. At midnight, he entered the dimly lit hall to find a pale glow in a distant corner. There stood Daniel, accompanied by a woman who introduced herself as Mary. She said she was Lillian's relative, and that Lillian's disappearance had hurled her into an ocean of agony. Daniel produced a file labeled Lillian's Will and asked Oliver to read it to grasp the magnitude of the betrayal caused by a false promise of love. Opening it with uneasy hands, Oliver found harsh words that reminded him of his departure during Lillian's most vulnerable moment. Her lines resonated like a deep wound, underscoring the enormity of a promise freely given yet abandoned. Mary later handed him a worn leather case containing diaries and recordings of Lillian's voice. When he played the recordings, he heard her speak mournfully about her longing for him to keep his word, and how that longing became a nightmare the day he walked away. He realized how arrogant he had been to think that he could simply bow out without repercussions. The mystery reached its peak when he finally found himself face to face with Lillian in a derelict house on the outskirts of town. She appeared pale, but not the vulnerable girl he once knew. Her composure revealed a newfound strength born of her scars. He tried to apologize, but her gaze betrayed pain too deep for easy remedies. She showed him a notebook detailing her time in psychiatric clinics and her growing dread of an unknown future. There he saw how she once viewed him as a ray of hope, only for that light to be extinguished. It felt like a verdict, not necessarily bent on revenge, but rather a reminder of the harm he had done. He stood there, realizing that her true retribution was not a direct punishment, but the knowledge of how his negligence had laid waste to her sense of safety. She left him with her diaries, recordings, and a final insistence that mere apologies would be meaningless unless backed by genuine change. As she disappeared, he understood he would find no peace unless he embraced honesty and courage. The wound he had inflicted ran deep, a cautionary sign to anyone who awakens love only to abandon it. He walked away realizing their story was not unique, but reflected all those who spark hope in another's heart and then discard it midway. He grasped the lesson: never stir someone's deepest feelings if you are not ready to protect them. Feelings, once awakened and cast aside, do not fade away. They become restless spirits that haunt us wherever we run. Moral of the story: the danger in betraying love is not simply losing one person, but undermining trust itself, which is the essence of all relationships. When we speak words that stir another's heart, we assume responsibility for the hope or hurt that grows within it. Every promise we fail to honor is like sowing seeds of chaos, which can haunt both parties long after separation. Acknowledging the seriousness of our emotional commitments may be the only way to find true peace. For anyone who plays with the fire of love risks being consumed by it. Such a flame does not merely burn a single heart. It can smolder deep within our own conscience and cast a shadow on our future as well.